Welcome back to the Weekend Prime Time. Congress is set to come back tomorrow, and they have a lot on their plates. In 2 days, there's the special election in Tennessee's 7th congressional district, which will either grow or shrink the GOP's narrow House majority. In addition, Congress only has 12 legislative days left on the calendar to get anything done.
Aides haven't necessarily done the best job always of defending him and messaging for him when they get on cable or broadcast news. I want you to take a listen to what Kevin Hassett, the National Economic Council Director, said on Fox this morning.
So we've seen data centers cropping up all over the country and a lot of the grid having to be replaced or updated, which has been very costly.
Okay, so I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because what just happened in Tennessee last night is sending shockwaves through the Republican Party, and it should terrify every GOP strategist looking ahead to the 2026 midterm elections. Republicans barely held onto a deep red congressional seat that they should have won by 20 points or more. The margin was just 8.9%. In a district Donald Trump won by 22 points in 2024. That is a 12.6-point underperformance in a single year, in a district that has not elected a Democrat in over 40 years, and Republicans had to pour millions of dollars into defending it. Trump himself held rallies there. Speaker Mike Johnson campaigned there. They threw everything they had at this race, and they barely survived. If this is what happens in safe Republican territory, imagine what is going to happen in competitive districts when the midterms arrive. The GOP is erupting in panic right now, and they have every reason to be terrified. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Well, I think we've seen the messaging around the Affordable Care Act shift enormously. The messaging from the White House and from Donald Trump himself about, I think it's done almost a 180, about the subsidies that were put in place during COVID are set to expire at the end of this year.
Like, younger people hear them and know they are talking because they're in their 30s as well. They know what it's like to delay milestones in your life. You can't get married or have a family or buy a house, all things that people want. So I think the younger generation, it's like peer-to-peer.
The numbers from Tennessee's 7th congressional district tell a story of Democratic resurgence that Republicans cannot spin away, no matter how hard they try. Matt Van Epps, the Trump-endorsed Republican candidate, won with 53.9% of the vote. Democrat Afton Ben got 45%. That 8.9-point margin sounds comfortable until you remember the baseline. Trump won this district by 22 points just 1 year ago. Democrats overperformed their 2024 benchmarks by 12.6 points. That is their best performance in this district this entire century. Not in a decade, not in a generation, this century. Something fundamental has shifted in how voters in deep red America are responding to the Republican Party under Trump's leadership. And that shift has Republicans across the country scrambling to figure out what went wrong and whether they can fix it before 2026. The early voting numbers were particularly alarming for Republicans in Montgomery County, which includes the military community around Fort Campbell. Ben actually led early voting by 3 points. That represents a 21-point shift from how that county voted in 2024, a 21-point swing in a single year in a county with a heavy military presence. Think about what that means. These are not coastal liberals or urban progressives suddenly discovering they disagree with Trump. These are military families and rural Tennesseans who voted for Trump last year and are now rejecting his party in a special election. The only county Ben actually won was Davidson County, which includes Nashville. But the margins she was running up in traditionally Republican areas were completely unprecedented for a Democrat in this district. Trump tried to spin the results as a victory on social media. He praised Van Epps for beating what he called millions of dollars from Democrats. But that framing ignores the reality that Republicans also spent millions defending a seat that should never have been competitive in the first place. When you have to spend millions and bring in the president and the Speaker of the House to hold a district you won by 22 points last year, that is not a victory to celebrate. That is a warning sign flashing bright red. GOP strategist Ian Russell called it a troubling sign, and he is right, because if Republicans are struggling this much in Tennessee, they are going to get absolutely crushed in swing districts where the margins are actually close. The high-profile nature of this race makes the results even more significant. This was not some under-the-radar special election that flew below national attention. Both parties treated it as a major test of their 2026 prospects. Vice President Kamala Harris rallied for Ben. Former Vice President Al Gore, a Tennessee native, campaigned for her. Democrats invested resources and attention because they sensed an opportunity. And while they did not win, they proved that the opportunity was real. Ben herself declared the results. the beginning of something powerful. She is right about that too. What happened in Tennessee's 7th District is a preview of what could happen across the country if these trends continue. The House majority implications are impossible to ignore. Republicans now hold a 219-213 advantage, an incredibly narrow margin that gives them almost no room for error. Every seat matters, every special election matters, and they just barely held one that should have been automatic. The vacancy came from Art Green's resignation in July. Green was a safe Republican incumbent in a safe Republican district. Replacing him should have been routine. Instead, it became a nail-biter that exposed just how fragile the GOP coalition has become under Trump's leadership. So today, we are going to break all of this down completely. We are going to look at the actual numbers from Tennessee and what they reveal about shifting voter sentiment. We are going to examine why Republicans underperform so dramatically in a district they should dominate. We are going to talk about what this means for the 2026 midterms and Republican hopes of maintaining their House majority. And we are going to discuss whether Democrats can actually capitalize on this momentum or whether the Tennessee results are a one-off fluke. Stay with me here, because this election shock reveals something fundamental about where American politics is heading. All right, let us get into the details of what actually happened in Tennessee and why these results have Republicans in full panic mode. Because the surface story, Republican wins special election, obscures just how alarming these numbers are for the GOP and how encouraging they are for Democrats heading into 2026. First, you need to understand the baseline expectations for this district and why any Republican margin under double digits represents a catastrophic underperformance. Tennessee's 7th congressional district is one of the safest Republican seats in the entire country. It includes parts of Nashville's suburbs, but is predominantly rural and conservative. No Democrat has held this seat in over 40 years. Mark Green won it comfortably in every election he ran. Trump carried it by 22 points in 2024. The Republican advantage here is not marginal, it is overwhelming. Or at least it was overwhelming until last night. Matt Van Epps won with 53.9% to Afton Ben's 45%, with 96% of votes counted. That margin sat at 8.9 points. Compare that to Trump's 22-point victory in the same district just 1 year earlier. That is a swing of more than 13 points toward Democrats in 12 months. In raw political terms, that is an earthquake. Special elections often produce unusual results because turnout is lower and more variable than in general elections. But a 13-point swing in a single year cannot be dismissed as noise or turnout effects. Something substantive has changed in how voters in this district view the Republican Party. And whatever changed here is likely changing in similar districts across the country. The county-level breakdown reveals where Democrats made their biggest gains. Montgomery County, home to Fort Campbell and a significant military population, showed a 21-point swing from 2024. Ben actually led early voting there by 3 points before Republican Election Day turnout pushed Van Epps ahead. Think about the significance of that. Military communities have traditionally been reliable Republican constituencies. They value national security and strong defense and tend to be culturally conservative. If Democrats are making 21-point gains in counties with heavy military presence, that suggests something about Trump's approach to the military and national security is alienating these voters. The controversies over domestic troop deployments and military leadership conflicts may be having electoral consequences in places that should be most sympathetic to a tough-on-security message. Davidson County, which includes Nashville, was the only county Ben actually won outright. That was expected given Nashville's liberal lean, but her margins in the surrounding suburban and rural counties were far better than any Democrat has achieved in recent memory. She was competitive in places where Democrats usually get crushed. She was running up numbers that suggest persuadable voters, people who voted for Trump in 2024, were willing to consider a Democratic alternative just 1 year later. That persuadability is what should terrify Republicans most. They cannot afford to have their 2024 voters reconsidering their choices. They need those voters to stay loyal, and Tennessee suggests at least some of them are not staying loyal. The resource disparity in this race makes the narrow margin even more remarkable. Republicans threw everything at defending this seat. Trump held campaign rallies. Speaker Mike Johnson came to campaign. The party spent millions on advertising and turnout operations. They treated this like a must-win race, which tells you they saw internal polling that worried them. Democrats also invested heavily with Vice President Harris and Al Gore making appearances, but Democrats were playing offense in hostile territory while Republicans were playing defense in their own backyard. When you have to defend your safest seats with presidential visits and millions in spending, your political position is deeply precarious. Trump's social media response to the results attempted to frame the narrow victory as a triumph against Democratic money. He praised Van Epps for winning, despite what Trump characterized as massive Democratic spending. But this framing is transparently defensive. Trump is trying to set expectations low enough that barely holding a 22-point Trump district counts as success. That is not how confident political parties behave. Confident parties expect to hold their safe seats comfortably and focus resources on expanding their map. Desperate parties celebrate narrow escapes in territory they should dominate. Trump's defensive spin reveals that he understands the underlying reality even if he will not admit it publicly. GOP strategist Ian Russell's characterization of the results as a troubling sign represents the honest internal assessment that Republicans are making behind closed doors. Special elections are imperfect predictors of future general elections. Turnout patterns are different, the candidates are different, the issues emphasized can be different, but when the same district swings 13 points in 12 months, that is not random variation, that is a trend. And trends in special elections have historically correlated with trends in subsequent midterms. Democrats overperformed in special elections throughout 2017 and 2018 and then won the House in a blue wave. If Democrats are overperforming by 12-13 points now, what does that suggest about 2026? The connection to broader Republican vulnerabilities makes Tennessee part of a pattern rather than an isolated incident. North Carolina polling has shown Republican struggles. Texas retirements are mounting as GOP incumbents decide they do not want to face difficult re-elections. The generic congressional ballot has been shifting in Democrats' favor. Government shutdown fallout and Trump administration scandals have created headwinds for Republican candidates. Tennessee fits into this larger picture of a party that is losing ground, with voters who supported them just 1 year ago. The GOP post-Trump fragility that analysts have been discussing is showing up in actual election results, not just polls and projections. Aftonband's declaration that the results represent the beginning of something powerful captures the Democratic interpretation of what happened. She did not win, but she proved something important. She proved that Democrats can compete in deep red territory if they have the resources and the right message. She proved that Republican advantages are not fixed and permanent, but can erode quickly under the right circumstances. She proved that the Trump coalition is more fragile than Republican triumphalism. After 2024 suggested, Democrats watching this race are taking notes about what worked and how to replicate it in similar districts across the country. The implications for 2026 House races are significant and worrying for Republicans. Their current majority is 219-213, a margin of just 6 seats. They cannot afford to lose more than a handful of districts and maintain control. If they are underperforming by 12-13 points, even in safe territory, what happens in the dozens of swing districts where the baseline margins are in single digits? Districts Trump won by 5 points become likely Democratic pickups if these trends continue. Districts Trump won by 10 points become competitive races requiring major resource investment. The map that looked manageable after 2024 suddenly looks like a minefield where almost any district could flip under the right circumstances. The candidate quality issue that plagued Republicans in 2022 may be reemerging as well. Van Epps was a Trump-endorsed candidate in the Trump district. He had all the institutional support the party could provide, and he still underperformed dramatically compared to presidential results. Either the candidate himself was weaker than he should have been, or the Trump brand that was supposed to lift him is now dragging candidates down. Neither interpretation is good for Republicans. If their candidates are too weak, they need better candidates. If Trump is the problem, they cannot fix that because Trump dominates the party completely. The historical pattern of midterm elections favoring the party out of power compounds Republican concerns. The president's party almost always loses seats in midterm elections. Trump himself saw Republicans lose the House in 2018. Biden saw Democrats lose the House in 2022. If the normal midterm penalty applies to Trump in 2026, and the Tennessee results suggest the penalty may be larger than normal, Republicans could lose their majority entirely. The 219-213 margin provides almost no cushion against historical headwinds, and the Tennessee results suggest those headwinds are blowing stronger than Republicans hoped. The Democratic path to flipping the House runs through exactly the kind of districts where Tennessee showed improvement. Suburban areas that have been trending blue, military communities that may be souring on Trump's approach to the armed forces, rural voters who are persuadable when Democrats invest in reaching them. If Democrats can replicate their Tennessee overperformance across similar districts nationally, they have a realistic shot at winning back the House. That prospect seemed distant after 2024. It looks much more achievable after December 2nd, 2025. Okay, so let us break this down into the key points you need to understand about the Tennessee special election and why it has triggered such panic within the Republican Party, because there is a lot happening here, and I want to make sure you walk away with a clear picture of what these results mean for the future of American politics. Point number 1, Republicans won Tennessee's 7th district by just 8.9 points despite Trump winning it by 22 points in 2024. Matt Van Epps got 53.9% to Aftonband's 45%. That 13-point swing toward Democrats in a single year is extraordinary by any measure. This is not a competitive swing district where small shifts are normal. This is one of the safest Republican seats in the country, showing massive movement toward Democrats. The baseline expectation was a comfortable double-digit Republican victory. The reality was a nail-biter that required maximum party investment to survive. Point number 2. Democrats overperformed their 2024 benchmarks by 12.6 points, their best showing in this district this entire century. That is not a one-election fluke or a candidate-specific phenomenon. That represents a fundamental shift in how voters in deep red Tennessee are responding to the Republican Party under Trump. Democrats have not been competitive here in over 40 years. They are competitive now. Something has changed in the political environment that is making traditionally safe Republican voters willing to consider alternatives. Point number 3. Montgomery County showed a 21-point swing from 2024, with Ben actually leading early voting. This is a county with heavy military presence around Fort Campbell. Military communities have traditionally been reliable Republican constituencies. A 21-point swing in a military county suggests that Trump's approach to the armed forces, the domestic deployments, and the conflicts with generals, and the politicization of the military may be alienating voters who should be most supportive of a strong defense message that has implications far beyond Tennessee. Point number 4. Republicans had to invest heavily, including Trump rallies and Speaker Johnson visits, to hold a seat they should have won easily. When you need presidential campaign level resources to defend your safest districts, your political position is deeply precarious. Every dollar spent defending Tennessee is a dollar not spent competing for swing seats. Every hour Trump spends rallying in safe territory is an hour not spent expanding the map. The resource demands of defending supposedly safe seats reveal just how fragile the Republican coalition has become. Point number 5. The House majority now stands at 219-213, giving Republicans almost no margin for error heading into 2026. They can lose only a handful of seats before losing control entirely. If they are underperforming by 12-13 points in safe territory, the math becomes terrifying in competitive districts. The dozens of swing districts where Trump won by 5-10 points all become vulnerable. The path to Democratic House control that seemed blocked after 2024 suddenly looks wide open if these trends continue. Point number 6. Trump's defensive social media spin, praising Van Epps for beating Democratic money, reveals he understands the underlying weakness. Confident parties do not celebrate narrow escapes in safe districts. They expect comfortable wins and focus resources on expansion. Trump framing barely holding a 22-point Trump district as a victory against the odds tells you he knows the numbers are bad. The spin is an attempt to reset expectations low enough that surviving counts as success. That is not triumphalism. That is damage control. Point number 7. GOP strategist Ian Russell called the results a troubling sign reflecting honest internal Republican assessment. Special elections are imperfect predictors, but 13-point swings in 12 months represent trends rather than noise. Democrats overperformed in special elections throughout 2017 to 2018 and then won the House in a blue wave. If Democrats are overperforming by similar margins now, the historical pattern suggests 2026 could produce similar results. Republicans cannot dismiss Tennessee as a one-off when it fits a broader pattern of declining support. Point number 8. Ben's declaration that this is the beginning of something powerful captures Democratic momentum and optimism. She did not win, but she proved Democrats can compete in deep red territory with proper investment. She proved Republican advantages are not permanent, but can erode quickly. She proved the Trump coalition is more fragile than 2024 triumphalism suggested. Democrats across the country are taking notes about what worked in Tennessee and how to replicate it in similar districts nationally. So where does all of this leave us as we process what happened in Tennessee and what it means for American politics? We have got a 13-point swing toward Democrats in one of the safest Republican districts in America. We have got the best Democratic performance in this district this century. We have got military communities showing 21-point swings away from Republicans. We have got maximum GOP investment required just to survive in safe territory. We have got a House majority with almost no margin for error. We have got Trump spinning narrow escapes as victories. We have got Republican strategists calling results troubling. And we have got Democrats sensing momentum and opportunity heading into 2026. The Tennessee results do not guarantee anything about future elections. Special elections are imperfect predictors. Candidate quality matters. Local issues matter. Turnout dynamics in midterms differ from special elections. But the direction of movement is unmistakable. Voters who supported Trump in 2024 are willing to consider Democrats in 2025. The Republican coalition is showing cracks in places that should be most solid. And the GOP majority in the House looks increasingly vulnerable to even modest continuation of current trends. The panic erupting within Republican circles is entirely rational, given what these numbers show. They are not panicking over nothing. They are panicking because the data suggests their position is much weaker than they believed after 2024. They are panicking because defending safe seats is draining resources they need for competitive races. They are panicking because Trump, who is supposed to be their greatest electoral asset, may actually be dragging down candidates in districts he won handily. The panic is the appropriate response to what just happened. Democrats should be cautiously optimistic, but not overconfident. Tennessee shows what is possible, but does not guarantee it will happen elsewhere. They need to invest in similar districts. They need strong candidates. They need compelling messages that reach persuadable voters. They need turnout operations that can compete with Republican efforts. Tennessee proved the opportunity exists. Capitalizing on that opportunity requires sustained effort and smart strategy over the next year. The 2026 midterms suddenly look very different than they did before December 2nd. The Republican House majority that seemed reasonably secure now looks like it could collapse under the weight of a political environment turning against them. The Trump coalition that delivered victory in 2024 now looks fragile and eroding just 1 year later. The safe seats that were supposed to anchor Republican control now look like they might require defensive resources that leave nothing for offense. Everything Republicans thought they knew about their electoral position is being challenged by what happened in Tennessee. The broader context of scandals and controversies affecting the Trump administration likely contributes to these electoral dynamics. Voters in Tennessee did not cast their ballots in isolation from national news. They are aware of the military deployment controversies. They are aware of the DOJ scandals. They are aware of the congressional chaos. They are aware of the threats against their own elected officials. All of this creates an environment where Republican candidates face headwinds that did not exist a year ago. The cumulative weight of negative news may be shifting voter preferences in ways that show up in election results like Tennessee. Hit that subscribe button because you are going to want to be here as we continue tracking what these results mean for 2026. The Tennessee special election triggered a massive shock that has Republicans erupting in panic and Democrats sensing opportunity. The 13-point swing in safe red territory suggests something fundamental has shifted in the political environment. The House majority hangs by a thread. The Trump coalition is showing cracks, and the path to Democratic control of the House looks more realistic than it has in months. Tennessee was just one election, but it may be the beginning of something much bigger. Until next time.